Hey everybody, this is Professor Diffley, and this is History 103, Module 2, Lecture Video 1. So this is the first module in the course, Module 2, where we'll be diving into the textbook, diving into the history information, obviously starting with Chapter 1. So this is what the lecture videos will be like. This first part here, what I'm going to do is just go through the module, especially for this module to show you how the modules be set up. They're pretty much going to be set up. Everything in here is going to be pretty much the same each module. Just run through there. And then the video beyond that will be me going through the lecture slides. So here we are, Module 2. Each one will start out with the learning goals and objectives. These are pretty straightforward. They tell you here really what you should be looking at, focusing on in the module when you're reading the textbook, when you're watching videos, when you're going over the lecture slides, that sort of thing. So a note here is if it appears here in the learning goals and objectives, a topic, a term, something like that, that means it's important and you're most likely going to see that topic on an exam and possibly and most likely on one of the blog assignments as well. So make sure you go through these. You see here first I start with the key history terms. I'll get to the key terms in a second. So then what you'll have is the next tell you when the due dates are, the reading assignments, that whole thing. This week it's really just Chapter 1 in the textbook and Chapter 1 lecture slides with notes. There's a couple required videos as well. So now about the key terms here, and I wrote here on Blackboard. You can see it there. These are really important list of important excuse me, topics from the current chapter and module. This is really there to help you focus your studying, right? So what I've seen students do, what I would do is they usually download the document and they either, well, one, they download the document. I gave you in Word, so you could also use it in Google Docs, the same thing. And what you should do is space out the terms, right? So you'll see I give you a list of terms, space them out so it gives yourself more writing space in between each term. I've seen students write these out, print them out and write right on them by hand, or download it and type their notes into there. That's totally up to you, just like the Module 1 video talked about on taking notes. Really find something that works with you, and try to stay consistent with it once you find that. Other things here, you'll have the lecture slides with notes. Again, I'm going to provide these for each module, each chapter that we do. There are lecture slides I put together that detail important information from the chapter for the module, and then they often have notes to them, and I'll show you those as we're going through the lecture slides later. But yeah, so make sure you read both, right? Not just what's in the slides, but also what's in the notes section. And I provide in the course content section there, I provide a folder and some explanation how to view the notes if you're going to use PowerPoint. If you're using Google Slides, it's pretty much the same thing, but it usually defaults to showing you the notes section. What you would do in Google Slides is really just go to View. Same thing really in PowerPoint. Go to View, up at the top toolbar, pick View and do Notes View, and it'll show you the slide and the notes together. And there are also required videos here, right? And so, yeah, the first time when you click on a required videos folder, if you're going through, for some reason, the way to do this, if you create a folder, it gives you this page here, and then you got to click forward to find the videos. And so I got 2 of them here for you this week in this module. There's usually a few of them. And one thing that's not appearing here yet in the table contents are the lecture videos. Why aren't they there yet? No, I'm creating it right now. And that will go in there. And so that'll be your required reading for the week. The only assignments you have each week, do the reading. There's usually a blog assignment and a module exam. And that is really what you have to do each week. So now what we're going to do is go over, and well, let me back up. Of course, if you have any question, any issues accessing any of this stuff in here in the module, just shoot me an email or post it on the general discussion board. Either way, I'll get back to you and help you come up with a fix for whatever it is. So moving forward. All right, now let's get into the lecture slides. And again, these are the lecture slides here. So these are the lecture slides. We'll go through them in these videos here. I'll go over some stuff, explain some stuff. As always, the lecture slides are part of the required materials for the week. Do not just rely on these. Make sure to read the textbook. I can't stress that enough. for a few of the questions, more than a few of exam questions, I would pull stuff straight out of the text that I mentioned in the slide, but only briefly. Again, this is the lectures are meant to enhance the textbook and the other materials, right? They offer other ways, again, the information, a little bit other explanations, but some stuff comes directly from the book. So make sure you read it. And whenever you read in the textbook, whenever there's those little, side boxes in there with, different vignettes or stories or information, make sure to read those. Make sure to read the pictures, that sort of thing. It's all part of it there. So here we are. Module 1, Chapter 1, and this is, the class is Ancient History, so where are we starting? In the beginning, right? Where the origins of humanity, right? Becoming human, where for a lot of this we'll look, and we'll start with archaeology of early, Homo sapiens, hominins, what we're really talking about here are early, evidence of early humans, or the creatures that eventually develop into or predate humans and things like that. And we're going to go all the way through the Neolithic Revolution, which is really the beginning of human civilization. So let's go through the slides here. So where do we start here? We're going to start with the overview terms. So these are terms that are going to help throughout the course, but so we're going to start with them right here. These are just some terms that are used in history that and we need to really clear up. So what are we talking about? Well, where we're going to start is prehistory, right? So you've often heard of prehistoric times, that sort of thing. So what do we actually mean? What do historians and others that study the past, archaeologists, anthropologists, what do they mean when they say prehistory or prehistoric? What they're talking about when they say prehistory is really an era of human existence before the written word. And that's really how we define this. So this is a time before we have documentation, written record, and written records can be anything. They could be, documents, they could be journals, they could be paintings, pictures, that sort of thing. This is before this. What this means is it makes learning about the past here hard, because evidence is hard to come by and it's not always clear. So what do we have to do as trained historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, that sort of thing? Is rely on our interpretation of artifacts and other forms of data. And so what this means is that, that our knowledge of the past is always changing. And that shouldn't be a surprise. We're always learning more things about the past. People say, oh, how could history change? Well, it does. Well, our understanding of history change is what we mean when we say that, right? Sometimes we find new things. We find, we're finding new, archaeological and other sites all the time as our technology gets better. One example of this is with the use of satellites and now drones and other things. In the past 20 years, there's been major discoveries of whole states, cities, societies that we never knew of that had died out long ago for various reasons. Like one example, it was about 5-6 years ago in what is today Iraq. There was a drought and one of the reservoirs dried out. And so for the first time, what they found was a palace at the bottom of this reservoir. No one had dove down there to look for it before. No one knew it was there. One of the things they found using Google Satellite, Google Earth, and people do this. You can join it as an amateur or just a citizen historian in many ways. Is they go over the Google Earth data and they look over these barren areas. So think of a desert, mountainous areas hard to get to, that sort of thing. But in Saudi Arabia, in the Arabian desert there, somebody was looking through the data, just going real slow, frame by frame, very slowly on the Google Maps at home on their computer, and found ruins of an ancient city that time had forgotten, right? It was in the middle of the desert. No one goes out there into this area anymore. And so things like that have been found. One more example closer to home. Recently, more and more Viking settlements have been found in North America, up through Canada, up towards Maine, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, places like that. How? Again, through satellite imagery, right? You can see from above the outlines of squares, straight lines. And that's always straight lines, things like that. That's always evidence of human settlement and human use. Why? Because nature doesn't build in straight lines, right? Humans do. And so if you find a square, perfect square out there, it's not nature. Humans did something. It's usually an outline of a a structure of some sort, but they're finding more and more of these by being able to see from high above. But again, now the problem with this is that our information is always changing. So a lot of what you're going to hear is called a theory. What do we mean by when we say a theory in history or science or anything like that? It means scientists and others always hedge their bets and say we can never be 100% sure of anything, right? Things always change, right? Before they split open the atom, they thought the atom was the smallest thing. They split it up and all these things come pouring out and then have to rethink their theory. So that's what a theory means, is really that it is what all of the evidence points to. That is what the prevailing weight of the evidence says at this moment. Again, things like that can always change. And so just keep that in mind. So a lot of the early history is, again, not set in stone, so to speak, right? As we learn more, we update our history and what we understand about the past. And that's the way all inquiry should be, right? And actually, that's a word. History comes from the Greek meaning inquiry, to ask questions, to look at the past, right? That's what a history is. That's what inquiry means. So more things. And again, this is what I was talking about. Ways to study prehistory. Demography is one way. Study of size, growth, density of human population. How do we do this? If they didn't leave any records, well, you can tell by the garbage they left behind, the size of their structures. You can begin to see and take a good analysis of how many people there were, how you compare it to what we use today, what other groups similar, right? We're going to talk about hunter-gatherer groups soon. Those still exist. The Native Americans, when the Europeans came to the Americas, they were hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherer groups still exist, places in Asia and Africa. Living that life. And so if that's how they live and they say their tools and their ways of life haven't changed, well, it's a fair bet that things weren't that much different way back when. Other ways, anthropology, and this is what I was talking about, studying humans, things like that. Again, how do we know about what hunter-gatherers were like in the past? Anthropologists and others study hunter-gatherer groups today. Again, there are uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. There are hunter-gatherer groups in Africa, parts of Asia. Like I said, Native Americans were. And so this is what they look to study these, and what their lives were like, their behavior, biology, linguistics, social and cultural variations, those things. And then you have archaeology. Archaeology is the study of ancient and recent human remains, right? So we study what they left behind, and we use that to interpret how they were used, what their lives must have been like. We do this through excavation, right? Excavating it, you dig up the earth, pretty much what it is. You uncover their tools. Some things become preserved. Most things do not become preserved, so they deteriorate, they decay, and so it depends on the environment. So we know more about dry climates, cultures, societies, and dry climates that were deserts. Why? Because there's not as much moisture. Things don't rot. We know less about places in wet areas. So when we talk about the Indus Valley, what is now Pakistan and India, we have less archaeological remains there than we do in, say, a desert area like what is Mesopotamia, what is today the Middle East. And so think about that. Things you have today, that's really what it is. Your objects from today. A pen, right? Think of that. It could tell us what people used them for, what their lives must have been like. Again, this is an imperfect science, but nonetheless, it is used to try to get as it says, a broad and comprehensive understanding of what human culture was like, what these people's lives were like. That's how you use archaeology. Moving ahead, some other ways. How do we tell how old something is? Well, one of the ways, and again, you don't really need to know all the science in here. I put all this in here because I talked about radiocarbon once and had some science majors in my class. They really wanted to know about it, so I provided it. Just understand radiocarbon dating is a way to determine the age of objects, right? What they look is radioactive isotopes, carbon-14. It's a heavier version of carbon. In everything, right? So it's in everything. So it gives us a rough date. What do we mean by that? It's around 500 years. 500 years is about the time frame it gives us. Now, to most people, that's a really long time, right? 500 years, give or take. But that's thinking in our lifespans, right? 500 years, we're not going to live that long, not nearly. So it seems like a really long time. But think of the long stretch of human existence, how long the planet's been around. Knowing whether something was 1,000 years ago or from today or 5,000 years ago, that does help. So So that does help. All right, well, this is the end of Module 2, Lecture Video 1. I'll start on the next slide in just a second.